Everyone wants to take their business, their skills, to the next level. Small and mid-sized business owners have exceptional insight into how to do this. They endure and thrive because they find ways to overcome the challenges that come their way, and they can teach us valuable lessons to apply to our own companies and lives. Stephen Nooner, founder and owner of Alkali, a company with a unique process that helps businesses more effectively buy and manage their insurance programs. And Bob Gibbons, builder of Riata Commercial Realty, a real estate advisor and tenant advocate, are two prominent Metroplex businessmen who, along with their weekly guests, will ask their and your probing questions, finding impactful solutions that will help you reach for the next level. Here are your hosts, Stephen Nooner and Bob Gibbons.
Welcome to The Next Level, conversations that propel business. I'm your host, Stephen Nooner.
And I'm your better host, Bob Gibbons.
You wish.
Depends on the day, right? Hey, we're here with our guest today, Dr. Jay Woody. And Jay is the Chief Medical Officer and founder of Legacy ER and Urgent Care. You don't hear those two words together often, do you? ER and urgent care? I guess that's more than
If you live in the north side of Dallas, you do.
Yes. Well, we're going to talk about that. They have 6 locations in the Dallas area, been around since 2008. And they've got a different model of how they're doing things. So I'm anxious to get into this. If you want to find out more about them, go to legacyer.com. Welcome, Jay.
Welcome.
Thanks.
So we like to start off every show with the wisdom of others, and you provided a quote I thought was interesting. I've seen it before. I even tried to Google it as a collector of quotes, and I couldn't find who actually said it first. But you put, pigs get fed and hogs get slaughtered.
That's a disturbing quote from a doctor.
Yes. Why is that? Why do you like that quote?
Well, first of all, I'm not a veterinarian. I am a doctor, so I like my quotes to be centered around not people or humans. So, that's actually one of my partners used that phrase with me once, and it really resonated well because, and it sort of goes to our model as well. Is we're trying to do something that's fair and works for people. And, if you get greedy or you try to do something that maybe isn't fair or doesn't work for a lot of people, that's the hog. And, we know what happens to the hog. So, again, I just want to keep feeding the pig and, let someone else take care of the hog for me.
I've always heard that quote, and I've never quite understood how to apply it in my life.
Clearly, the key distinction, though, is doctor versus veterinarian is a good starting place for you, Bob.
Although with some people, I think either would apply and could probably do the job. Hey, tell us something about yourself, Jay, that most people don't know.
Well, I think most people think I'm from West Texas, which is true. But I did graduate from high school in Oxford, England.
Wow.
And so that's something.
What took you over there?
My mother worked for the Department of Defense, so a U.S. government job, and so I ended up packing up, moving to England, and finished high school there, and studied at a liberal arts school there for some time until I ran out of money and I had to come back to Texas.
How long were you in England?
I was in England for little over 2 years.
So how did that go when you tried to speak West Texan to them?
Well, fortunately, my accent isn't as thick as as some others. But to them, I was a Yankee regardless.
So do the girls think West Texas accent is sexy like the girls here think British accents are sexy?
I hate those guys.
Unfortunately, it did not work that well for me. Yes.
Well, at least your teeth are straight. So.
Exactly. So.
Just joking around.
Well, we are joking around, but some things are truth in jest, are they not?
This is true.
So let's get into your business before we get knocked off the air. Yeah. How did you get into your business? I mean, obviously you're a physician, but making the switch into starting this type of model, how did that come to be?
Sure. So I'm board certified in emergency medicine and started my practicing in the traditional setting, which was in a hospital. Worked in a number of trauma centers and big urban hospitals here in the Dallas area, and after some time, just realized that there had to be a better way to provide the care that we were providing to our patients. And it's difficult because in the big settings, everyone's doing the best they can, and I think we have some phenomenal health resources here in Dallas, but a lot of times there's a disconnect between, say, for example, the doctor and the nurse and the radiology department and the lab department and the administrative department. And a lot of times that happens because hospitals are big animals, and it is harder to move the parts all in the same direction when you're really big. And so myself and some others said, hey, there's got to be a better way to do this. And we came up with the idea of, well, what if we took the emergency care out of the traditional hospital setting and moved it into a smaller sort of facility that all pulled in the same direction. So everyone works for the same person, because a lot of times in the hospital, people work for, maybe they're independent contractors, or maybe they're a third party that comes in and services things. We wanted everyone to work and have the same boss so that we could all be aligned and all pull in the same direction to provide what we felt like would be a better patient experience for the patients that we treated and saw. And then on top of that, we said, hey, a lot of times people come into the emergency room and they don't really need to be.
Shouldn't be there.
Exactly.
Tremendous waste there.
Absolutely. And that diverts more resources at our hospitals, which goes back to the original problem that they're having right now.
Drives up healthcare costs.
Absolutely. So if you end up in the emergency room with an issue that could be treated by your primary care physician or in an urgent care, that's going to hurt you financially, and it hurts the system. It's really bad for everybody.
What kind of pushback did you get? Just a curiosity. I mean, and as you guys are growing, maybe at first they didn't. I mean, have you received any pushback from the hospitals and everything? I mean,
well, so initially, all my colleagues thought I was crazy and that you can't do that. And this was back in 2005, 6-ish. At the time, there were no laws, no legislation. Insurance companies didn't know who we were or what we were, and so there was absolutely pushback from everyone, including the hospitals. Now, you fast forward a few years, in 2009, there were some laws that were passed that helped sort of legitimize our business in the eyes of those people I just mentioned.
So let me stop you for a second and go back. So you said everybody was sort of against it or didn't understand it or whatever. What made you think that you had to keep going? I mean, if insurance wasn't on board, was it all private pay?
There were some pretty rough years there in the beginning, and thank goodness I had a very supportive wife who said, if you believe in it, you could do it, and had some good partners, and we, we believed in the model of taking that emergency care out of the hospital, and then also having the urgent care. That's what makes our model different than some of the others that you might be familiar with in your neighborhood now.
And wouldn't that make that, just out of curiosity, I mean, you probably then had legislative pushback, because initially you couldn't have the two together, could you, in freestanding? Or
so initially there were no rules or licenses for freestanding emergency rooms that were not a part of a hospital system. And so that's the legislation that was passed that said if you meet this fairly rigid and strict criteria, if you meet all these standards, which are good because it standardized them, so you, as a patient, you're not
going to a real emergency room.
Take care of you.
Right.
Absolutely. So that was good. And it also legitimized, it said, it told everyone, hey, you have to, This is the real deal, and you have to treat them like you would a hospital emergency room.
So who was going after that legislation? I mean, you wouldn't think the hospitals would have been in favor of that legislation. So how did that happen?
So there was the few people that were around in Texas, not only here in Dallas, but particularly in Houston, that believed in that model and believed in legitimizing it through legislation, were the ones that pushed that through. And one of my partners actually was testified in Austin before one of the committees to help make this legislation happen. And so we really have been there from the very beginning to now. Fast forward, and things look very different than they did.
Sure.
They did all those years ago.
I've watched that evolved, and then even hospitals responding by trying to set up emergency room clinics out and about and around.
Absolutely. So the interesting thing, some of the naysayers initially have changed their tune now. So that's been exciting.
They just want to get in on the action.
Well, absolutely, and they
Not
realized
without.
that this is a way that they can get a place in communities where they might not be able to, build a big hospital because that costs a lot of money.
Sure.
But they would love to take care of those patients. For example, if they need services that we can't provide in our facility.
Right.
And so obviously we have some partnerships with some of the area hospitals, and we have a very great working relationship, and that's good for our patients, which ultimately is only reason that we did this in the beginning.
Okay, so walk us through. Sorry, Stephen.
No, you go
Walk
ahead.
us through the difference between urgent care and emergency care.
Yeah.
What are the differences in those, and how are they billed differently?
So two questions that are aligned. So emergency care, you can probably imagine in your head what an emergency is.
Yeah, my arm's cut off.
Your arm is cut off. You're having a heart attack. You have a stroke. You break your bone in half. Now, some things that you may be like, well, I don't know if that's emergency or not, and I think that's where people get into trouble because they say, well, do I need to go to the emergency room or do I need to go to the urgent care? So all those things you just mentioned, we all know. Call the ambulance, go to the emergency room, whatever. Those are the ones that are easy. It's the gray zone in the middle where people have the problem, and they end up going with something that is turns out to be super minor, and they end up in the emergency room for that. So, for example, if you have a sore throat, strep throat, your kid has a little fever and the throat hurts, you may be thinking, well, do they have meningitis? Do I go to the emergency room, or is it just strep throat and I can just go to the urgent care? So if you go to the emergency room, they absolutely will do phenomenal care, check you out, make sure everything's okay. It's just that's going to cost you potentially several thousands of dollars. If you ended up in the urgent care for that same complaint, that's probably going to cost you a couple of $100s. So big difference in
Huge.
those. And if you choose incorrectly,
Yeah.
then it's going to hurt. And that's what's hard for the patients and consumers, because how would you know?
Yeah, because I've heard stories, even on my neighborhood, we have a Facebook page for the neighborhood, and I've seen people going on posts about, hey, I went to such and such ER, out in the neighborhood, and oh my gosh, I can't believe the bill I got. And they're freaked out, and clearly they didn't know what they were walking into.
So lack of patient education. A lot of what we do when we're working with employers is we spend a lot of time trying to educate them on the distinctions. What they provide is an opportunity to go to one place and then have
You don't have to
really
worry
figure
about
that out,
yeah.
right?
It's a safer bet to go to
Right.
this.
So that's what I'm excited about with Legacy ER, because you come in and you don't have to know, is this a real emergency or is this urgent care, or can I wait till tomorrow? Because what happens if you come in, you just get evaluated, and it's not like you went to the emergency room and then they sent you to the urgent care, or vice versa.
Yeah.
They see you get seen by a board certified doctor, and they just say, hey, this is, by some criteria, we'll take care of you in the urgent care, or we'll take care of you in the emergency room. And the billing on the back end is what's most important to you after everybody makes sure.
But there's
you're
still
okay.
also a big distinction between going to my primary care physician, my internist, or family practice versus urgent care.
There typically is. I mean, your best option, if you have time and you can wait, is to see your primary care physician. Absolutely. That's, in general, that's always going to be your best bet, sort
Financially.
of cost-wise.
Okay.
And then the urgent care would be up from that, and then the ER is, sort of
Way
8
up.
to 9 times up from that.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
a big multiple. Well, we're going to go to break, but when we come back, Dr. J is going to tell us who's going to live longer, me or Bob. Stick around.
And now, Confessions of a Recovering Landlord.
This is Bob Gibbons with Riata Commercial Realty, and I am your recovering landlord. After 20 years as a landlord, I now use that experience only for the benefit of companies that lease or buy office buildings and warehouses. Today's confession: knowledge is power. We all negotiate from a position of power and strength, or at least we want to. In any negotiation, the party with the most knowledge probably has the upper hand. And landlords count on this being the case whenever you're negotiating a lease, because most landlords are professional real estate investors and they hire professional leasing agents and property managers. Landlords are in the market every day negotiating leases, while tenants probably only negotiate 1, maybe 2 leases every few years. So tenants feel outgunned. Don't let landlords have all the power. As a former landlord for 20 years, I understand how landlords think and what motivates them, so let me put that knowledge and experience to work on your side of the negotiation. To learn more, contact me at texastenantrep.com. Again, that's texastenantrep.com.
Have you started making plans to take your business to the next level in 2016? Hi, I'm Stephen Nooner, founder and CEO of Alkali. We have a trademark process called the Empowered Advantage that enables CEOs, business owners, and entrepreneurs to more effectively buy and manage their insurance. Before sitting down to make your plans for the new year, here are just a few things to consider. Would you say that you have an actual insurance strategy, one that you can articulate, or have you just purchased a policy here and there over the years? If you have an insurance strategy, was it discussed under the pressure of a renewal deadline or considered earlier in the year to avoid fire drill decision making? If your answer was no to either of these questions, then you may not have the right partner on your team. Visit alkaliservices.com to contact us and take the next step to a bigger and better future.
Hi, this is Tad McIntosh, president and founder of HomeCap. We're a human resources and recruiting firm, and we're going to be on next week's show of Next Level. Love to have you on the show and talk about the combination of talent, business, and how are the Dallas Cowboys going to do this season.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Next Level. We're here with our special guest, Dr. Jay Woody of Legacy ER and Urgent Care. If you want to learn more about Dr. Jay, please visit legacyer.com.
All right, so I wanted to go back to something we were talking about before, and you made the comment about, or no, I guess actually, Stephen, you made the comment about patient education and how do they know the difference between going to their primary care physician versus urgent care versus, quote, doc in the box versus, emergency. Telehealth, teledoc. I mean, going to the Minute Clinic at CVS. I mean, there's all kinds of options out there. So help us out, Dr. J, with some of the ideas on patient education. How can they get educated so they have a clue?
So the good news for patients in the Dallas area and Texas in general, they have lots of options, and so you're going to get good care. So that's the good news. The bad news is all those things you mentioned. They all have a scope of practice that is, some are very narrow and some are wide, and so it is confusing for the consumers. And I think that's where, like you mentioned earlier in your neighborhood, if you get confused and end up in the wrong place, it's going to be a tough pill to swallow. So one thing that we're doing is we think that that's one of our biggest weaknesses, and so we devote a lot of time and energy to educating the public. Via our website, which I welcome anybody to take a look at that. It kind of breaks it down, the difference and why and where you should go.
And again, that's legacyer.com.
Yes, and also insurers are currently also working really hard to educate their patients, because not only does it cost you as a consumer when you go to the wrong place, it also costs insurance companies. So they're working hard on it.
Sure.
Even the freestanding ER community is also working hard to help describe, make sure people are clear that those facilities provide emergency care only. So there's a lot of wheels moving in that area, but I still think it's a huge weakness across the board, and especially with a hybrid or a dual facility like ours that offers both care. That's even a tougher education model to explain to people.
I think that's what's unique. I mean, a lot of people don't want to talk about this. It's not super sexy to talk about, but a lot of times we were talking earlier about the hospitals opening their outpatient freestanding ER without the urgent care. When people go there, they get the big bill, they get the shot. We're seeing lots and lots of, and I know this is a question you want to ask, but I've been seeing lots and lots of acquisitions of like kind of freestanding type places by the hospitals, and then what happens then is the bill rates to the insurance companies are dramatically
Going
higher.
up.
Yeah,
because the bill rate when it's associated with the hospital is higher than when it's not?
Well, because it might be associated with the hospital, their bill rates might be differently, but then also you see the higher. If now it's truly an emergency room versus where where I see it more is in the labs,
okay,
where you'd have the freestanding lab that was independently owned, and now it kind of has that independent name, but now it's associated with XYZ Hospital. I'll leave them unnamed, right? But XYZ Hospital's bill rate might be 3 times what that independent was charging for the same test.
So one thing I saw on your website, Jay, was there's a video that one of the local radio or TV stations did talking about the differences between ER versus urgent care, and they even talked about your model specifically. So I thought that was a pretty great thing. So again, to our listeners, go to legacyer.com and check out that video.
Yeah, and so again, we're working really hard just because that is a challenge for us, and we want to. The whole reason that we got into this business was to help patients and provide a fair billing model for them, and it goes back to my original quote. We want to take care of the pig and not be the hog, and so that's why this education is something that, like I said, we really, really work hard on.
Well, let me throw in a plug for my co-host here, Stephen Nooner, and Alkali. One thing that I will tell our listeners that's really unusual about his company is that for their group health clients that choose this feature, their employees can actually call Stephen's company, Alkali, and ask questions about their health coverage, and they will get advice right then. They don't have to go calling their HR director or their supervisor, who probably doesn't have a clue. They're calling somebody who's an insurance expert to tell them.
So we're giving the insurance perspective, not treating any conditions or anything like that.
Wait a minute. So if I hurt myself, I can't call you up and ask Stephen.
But we will help them draw the distinction of running to the emergency room versus going to urgent care, or now an option of if you're not sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds like a phenomenal benefit to the people that use that service, and I think on that same level, being in network with the third party payers is also important, and that's something that the patients or consumers should really look into before visiting any urgent care, ERs and whatnot. Now there's some nuances with ER billing and being in network, but at the end of the day, if any facility, whether it's a hospital, an ER, an urgent care, or doctor's office, is in network with your benefits, it's always going to be work to your advantage. So just as an education piece. Now, if it's a real emergency, you don't have the time to look into that, which is why there's some special carve outs to take care of that. But outside of that, you as a consumer, you want to make sure that you're covered, and you're probably, it sounds like you're well familiar with how that works.
Sure, yeah, and like I said, and for us, it's not usually an emergency. It's when they have more time and they're trying to figure out where they want to go and the distinctions of how their plan's going to provide coverages. And a lot of times it's 1-800 or go to the HR person or go to the business owner, CFO. It's a small business, and one, they don't want to know maybe what their employees have because of HIPAA and other things, and it can be uncomfortable conversations. So what we do is help them get kind of clear and get some direction and keep the business owner focused on better things.
That's awesome. So Jay, Stephen alluded to something a minute ago, which is that some of the little locations around town are being bought by the hospital chains. What kind of consolidation in your industry are you seeing?
So I think we're going to see some major consolidation happening in this, the next 12 to 15 months, and it's going to be it's going to be a mixed bag. I think where you're going to see is some of the larger hospitals, and you've already seen some of that happening now, are partnering or buying and getting involved with some of the freestanding ERs. I think you're going to see a lot of the smaller players either get bought up or just completely go under, just because the market is pretty saturated right now, and there's only so many emergencies that one can have in an area, and so when you see like you've seen in some industries in the past where you have people providing the exact same service at maybe similar prices, all within a 1 mile geographic area, it's just not sustainable. And so I think we're just going to see a lot of changes, and I think there's going to be a lot of pressure on the exclusive emergency care providers, because again, as we do our job to educate consumers, they're going to recognize, that is not the right place for me to go for my sprained ankle, and they'll become more savvy, and but that's good for all of us. It's good for healthcare, and so that's going to put some pressure on the people that are providing emergency care only.
Well, with me being in real estate, as I was mentioning in the break, I'm anxious to see what happens to all these little buildings, because we went through the same thing. Over the last 20 years, we've seen all kinds of fads, whether it be the yogurt shops, the bagel shops, the little tiny banks on every corner in town, and ultimately those get consolidated and a bunch of them get closed, and then what do you do with those locations, those facilities? And these are such specially built facilities. It'll be interesting to see what some of those end up being someday.
It sounds like maybe a good business opportunity for you.
I don't know about that. I got to make a little money. Mama needs new shoes.
So, quick question, just out of curiosity. I mean, for those young listening, you're wearing scrubs. So, I mean, I'm guessing you're still in the day-to-day practice. How do you balance building your business? You got 6 locations versus the business side of it. So, practicing medicine versus business.
That's a question I sort of ponder every day. So I will say I spend a majority of my time doing administrative duties. Stuff, yes. Because a lot of it is because, of course, starting out as being the, sort of owner-operator, clinician, janitor, IT support, HR, benefits, that is really where we started, and now we've come to a place where we have real experts doing those things, and so the area that I stick to is what I know best, and that's the clinical area. And so I work particularly with the physicians and the nurses, all the clinical staff, and so the majority of what I do is in that area, going around the facilities, making sure that we're providing the great care that was our dream to begin with, and making sure that any operational problems that are associated with the clinical part of our business is getting worked out smoothly.
Thus the chief medical officer title, I'm guessing.
That's right. That's right.
Okay, so when you go back and look at when you guys were getting started, what was one of the biggest sort of breakdowns or mistakes or whatever that was made that you guys had to kind of overcome and learn from, figure out how to deal with?
So we had a few of those, and when I say a few, I'm using that term loosely. I think one of the things that was most challenging for us that we didn't realize when we first started this was how important it was to be in network with the payers. I think in our minds we thought, well, if we do a good job, people will be okay with that and they'll take care of it. But the reality is healthcare is super expensive, and if you're paying for benefits to get a discount at an in-network place, you're going to be hard-pressed to pay extra for that. And so that's something we learned that lesson very quickly, and then worked very aggressively to get in-network with as many providers as we could. And again, the balance was it has to be a fair, because it's fair billing, fair contracts with providers. All that's important, because otherwise you can't run the business and sustain it if you don't have fair contracts.
So what's next?
So what's next now is we're really excited because we've partnered with some people that have brought in experts, and they've brought in capital, and they've brought in a lot of people that know how to do all those things I mentioned earlier that I'm not an expert at. And so our goal is to continue to work on and perfect what we're doing right now with our 6 facilities, and then see what happens with all the consolidation, and if there's any opportunities there, obviously we'll take a look at those. But I think more importantly is the consolidation is partnering with some of the bigger players, hospital groups, and helping them understand our dual model.
Well, Dr. Woody, we appreciate you being on our show today.
Thank you.
For our listeners, if you'd like to learn more about Legacy ER and urgent care, or do I have that backwards? Is it urgent care first or ER first?
We do them both, so
it
doesn't really matter.
All right, go.
That's the advantage. You don't have to know. You just come in and we help you.
That was totally a
figure it out.
setup. I'm just that's a lot.
LegacyER.com.
Thank
Have
you.
a great week.
See you next week.
You have been listening to The Next Level, Conversations That Propel Business with Stephen Nooner and Bob Gibbons. Join us every Tuesday at 1:30 p.m. for more prolific conversations that will take your business to the next level.